Hi, this is a video about frag boosts, specifically all the frag boosts that I have managed to come up with so far and the setups I use for them. I'm gonna go through all these chronologically, starting with BT. BT already has a lot of frags routed in that are already being used, those being the first enemy clear, BBRJ, Josh frag if BBRJ fails, and the last enemy clear. You get 4 frags at the start of the level, but you need to reach the last enemy clear with at least 2 frags in order to not lose time, so the routing is pretty rigid on these frags. However, if you end up with extra frags from killing grunts, it would be a waste not to use them. So if you have 3 frags left while picking up the second battery, you can do this frag boost here, and my setup for this is as follows. Buffer a frag pull by holding the frag button as the animation is ending, and walk diagonally left and backwards. Turn around so you can start sprinting and run off the edge. Strafe to the left so you make it through the hole, and when you're ready to drop the frag, make sure you're looking straight down. The moment you hear the beeping is the moment you want to let go of the frag by switching weapons. After dropping the frag, jump and proceed as normal. I personally find this frag boost a bit easier than getting a good slant boost, just because your strafes don't have to be quite as precise. The frags in Blood and Rust are a bit trickier and require more precise timing, especially the first one. So right after picking up Tone, you can disembark boost and move along this hallway with some fairly precise wall kicks on the left wall to make it onto this big cylinder without going for a separate wall kick on the right wall. What's important for this is getting a lot of height while maintaining momentum, because you'll need both to make it from the pipes to the cylinder. Starting with a no-lurch disembark boost, make your way around the curve with a no-lurch double jump, a regular slide hop, and another double jump to get as high on the wall to wall kick off it from as high as possible. After the wall kick, you'll need to start strafing very aggressively to the left and do a light tap strafe to make sure you make it to the pipes. From those, wall kick all the way to the cylinder and throw your frag straight down once you land on it. I pull my frag in between the first and second wall kick, but depending on how fast you're going, you might need to pull it at a slightly different time. If you're faster than me, pull it earlier. If you're slower, pull it a bit later. Just make sure you actually reach the cylinder. As you're transitioning from the frag boost into the movement toward the button, also make sure you cloak, or else you'll get game ended. The second frag comes right after the button. This one requires a different audio cue since you'll drop your frag in front of you and then start to move past it. I pull and immediately drop my frag during the pause after the announcer says this, and I start moving when I hear her say this. With those timings, the boost that you'll get from the frag isn't actually too huge, so it shouldn't severely affect your strafe pattern through the corridor. You'll just have to adjust to the speed, but you don't need a completely different strafe pattern in my experience. And that's all the frags in Blood and Rust, so let's move on to this one. Now this one I'm excited to talk about because this level is just packed with cool frag boosts, and alright, well, the end of it is. I swear, once you get past this Titan fight, the last 20 seconds of gameplay are super fun and challenging with these frags. Let's first start with frags usable in full game runs. For a full game run, you have to make sure to pick up Brute on the right here, and from there you can no-lurch disembark boost to the left while holding your frag button to instantly pull your frag. Start strafing to the right just before you hit the ground and drop your frag in front of you about when your crosshair passes over this corner on the floor. Double jump to make it on top of this pillar, and with a good boost you should be able to just make it across the gap and land on the railing and continue with a tap strafe into the hallway. Once you press the button, turn around, slide, jump, and pull your frag in mid-air. I use this line on the ground as a visual cue. Once I see it getting kind of close to the edge of my screen is when I pull the frag. After that, I do a no-lurch double jump with a light tap strafe to the left, but any movement through this hallway should be fine as long as you end up landing on the edge of this staircase right here. This is where you look straight down and throw the frag. Also make sure that for this last slide hop, tap strafe to the left again, or you'll be boosted too far to the right and slam into this cable. No-lurch double jump for the maximum height and distance, and with a wide arcing strafe you can make it right to the edge of the platform, where you just need to hold your interact key and fall to your not death. Now let's wind back a bit and talk about a frag boost that happens earlier, but is only usable in ILs, because with this strat, we skip picking up Brute. For this frag boost, you'll be disembarking earlier and moving through where you just fought as Cooper, so regularly placing your flame traps all over the room won't work because they burn long enough as to be able to damage you when you disembark. So to move around this issue, for the fight, you'll want to only place the flame trap at the first door, and not the one in the back of the room. This does add some randomness to the fight, but I tended to have better luck with how the enemy titans moved when I shot the Tone in the back before putting up my flame shield. After the fight ends, you'll want to position yourself in front of the first door and a bit to the right, while looking slightly to the left. From there, you can disembark boost and buffer a frag pull while strafing to the right and double jump as to not land in the fire. A bit after landing on the floor is when you'll want to drop your frag, aiming around this line under the door. You'll also want to make sure that the grenade explodes while you're in the air, so you get enough height from the boost to make it on top of the rack with a well-timed double jump. From there, just proceed with any movement you need to land on top of the pillar to make it across the gap. Again, this strat is only usable in ILs because we don't pick up Brute, which we would need later on in a full game run. Alright, up next, Abyss 2. Abyss 2 is still mostly an auto-scroller, so the only time save... no, this one's too dumb, even for me, ignore that one. We're skipping ahead to Abyss 3. Okay, starting with the least unreasonable one. This one doesn't change the route, so do descent caverns as normal and pull your frag when you pass over these wires. Land on a moving wall and listen for the grenade beep. Once you hear it beep, jump off, turn towards the wall and throw your frag at it. Since the wall is angled upward, throwing your frag at it horizontally will cause it to bounce up and boost you downwards, making the maneuvering around the rocks more difficult. So make sure you aim a little bit lower to boost yourself up rather than down. Go for a wall kick on these rocks on the right and tap strafe through the hole to embark onto BT. And here come the less reasonable frags. The first one comes right after cylinder skip. Once you finish the climb, on the last wall jump on the wall of the dome, pull your frag. Take a tight line around the rocks on the left with no ledge double jumps, and drop your frag in front of you right after the second double jump. Remember to cloak to avoid being shot and take this route here. This jump here is pretty tight but doable if you just hold your slide until you can jump and tap straight to the left to make it through the tight gap. Keep going and aim for the edge of the dome for your last jump and pull your frag at the same time as the last jump. Also watch out for this rock on the left here since it's pretty easy to bonk with this line. Now, where you aim your throw is going to depend on your speed and height jumping off of the dome. The faster you're going, the closer to the edge you should aim your throw. Ideally, you want to come down to this last jump with a close to 90-degree angle to make aiming the throw a bit easier. If you come down at the ground with such a sharp angle, you'll only need to throw your frag almost straight down for it to bounce up and explode midair. This is definitely one of those frag boosts of which the setup varies widely depending on your movement through the caverns up to that point, so this is the only frag boost that I still do mostly by feel. Effect and Cause 1 has a few smaller frag boosts that are, at best, small optimizations, but still pretty cool. The first one happens in the lecture room. Once this door disappears in the time shift, slide and jump. Pull the frag at the same time as your jump input. Move through to the right and throw your frag against this gray part of the wall. One thing to note with this. If you get a really strong boost with this and go really fast through the lecture hall before the time swap, there is a small chance that Marta doesn't react to you and you'll lose a couple of seconds. This has only happened to me like 2 times though, so I don't think it's something to be super worried about. The other frag happens at this door in the robot room. At this door, hold forward into it and pull your frag when the door lets you run forward a bit but doesn't open. Once it opens, slide, look 45 degrees down in front of you, drop the frag, and jump for the left wall. This should boost you into the trigger for the next time swap as quickly as possible. Until recently, Effect and Cause 2 had 3 rigidly routed frag boosts, one being used after Anderson's second log, and the other 2 being used for Hellroom Zipless. However, it was found that you only need 1 frag for Hellroom Zipless, which leaves 2 frags up for routing, and I use these here. Right at the start of the level, after grabbing the glove, time swap and buffer a frag pull with a slide and jump toward the left wall. After wall kick off that, you can throw the frag against the wall above the door to have it bounce back and explode behind you. The next frag comes pretty soon after that. After pressing this button and time swapping, pull your frag and slide and then run around this corner, wall run on the top of it and jump off with a strafe to the right. You'll want to drop your frag as your crosshair is passing over this black line. Keep strafing to the right and go for a wall kick on the right wall to make it over the gap. Frag boosts in Beacon 2 are pretty redundant for the most part because we get the softball pretty early on with which we can boost ourselves pretty safely throughout the whole level, but we don't have it from the start of the level, and that is where we can fit in a frag boost. Slide on this rail and pull your frag at the same time. Then jump off and strafe to the left once you pass this last gap between the rails. Slide hop once and aim about 45 degrees down and drop your frag once your crosshair passes over this piece of whatever this is. I didn't consciously use this thing to line up for the frag when I was recording the footage for this, but watching it back, all my successful attempts do this, so if you want to use that as a lineup, go for it. You can be cautiously optimistic that you did it right if you either hear a tiny grenade beep or you don't hear the grenade at all, but no promises. After all that, you can double jump to make it onto this terminal here and proceed through the door. If you're a real gamer, you can probably also go for the fast strat of getting wall kick on the outside of this terminal, but I haven't had too much success with that. Alright, the arc, sorry. This is going to be the last level I'll be talking about in this video because in the fold weapon, you don't have access to nades unless you get them from an enemy drop. The Arc also has some already routed frags, but only one of them is to boost yourself and the other 3 are used for committing atrocities of war. However, you can replace one of the murder frags for a silly fun boosty frag. The place I like to use this last frag is for 6-4 skip, and this is my setup. Standing on the right half of the 6-4, look at the Malta and pull your frag once you can clearly see that you're moving towards it. Look at the little circles on the blue trajectory for the grenade and drop your frag once the 4th circle appears. Immediately sprint forwards, slide, and jump. This should give you a strong boost, but you'll have very little air control, so try to get the right trajectory directly from the frag boost to minimize the need for strafing. Lots of other things can still mess you up though, because well, this is the Arc. You've got RNG with the ship movement, the fall timer, and general other bugs and glitches to worry about, so this is a tricky one that I don't recommend you do in full runs unless you're very epic. And that is all the frag boosts I've managed to come up with so far, which leaves one very important question. Should you actually use these? And my answer to that is, probably not. At least not most of them, and not in full game runs until you're really confident with them. Until then, these are more suited for ILs or a segmented run. Okay, that's it. Thanks.